Alright, check this out. Do you have a love for animals but insatiable hunger for financial gain? Can you stomach making money off the backs of underpaid employees? And are you okay with a little animal discomfort? Then do I have the game for you. Zoo Tycoon is a business sim that incorporates animals into the business plan. As far as I can tell, these ideas combined have never led to any pain or suffering and usually ends up working out in the animal's favor. Zoo Tycoon was created by now dead Blue Fang Studios. They are responsible for all the good Zoo Tycoon games and expansions, and other various animal-based games. Initially, I was going to do a regular game review that explains the mechanics of the game, with some jokes here and there, but it turns out explaining business sim mechanics makes for a pretty boring script. So instead, I'm going to share my rags to riches story, starting from a small sad animal exhibit zoo to a giant enterprise of small sad exhibits. I didn't want to make it too easy for myself, so I gave myself a small loan of $10,000 to start my zoo, and I picked the moon for the location. What this taught me is, in real life, if I got 4 of my closest astronaut friends that somehow were able to save both of their snimmies, I too could theoretically start my own zoo. But I digress. The first people when they arrived on the moon must have thought, wow, what a great leap for mankind. There's almost nothing we can't achieve through human perseverance and working together. My first thought was, how much money can I get for the copper wire in these old moon base walls? Turned out to be 7 Gs. With an honest day's work of copper wire collection behind me, I could now afford to start sourcing animals for my zoo. I couldn't think of a better animal to start my zoo with than the most easily obtained animal in America, the Bengal tiger. I was able to find a supplier from and ship them to the moon. After putting them in their new environment, it turns out that tigers don't like the moon too much. And if I don't want PETA breathing down my neck, I suppose I could give them a quote-unquote suitable environment. I can't afford to keep buying fur coats every day. A tiger zoo is great if you're a Florida man with no morals, but if you really want people to patronize your zoo, you need to get the best animal attraction there is, the chimpanzee. And what better place to put them than across from their natural predator, just like nature intended. Unfortunately, my lust for money drove me to make poor financial decisions. I got the chimps without thinking of the cost to actually house them. I had to think of a moneymaker fast, so I invested in a snack machine, but it wasn't enough. Fortunately, within 5 minutes of getting the tigers, they gave birth. The miracle of life. Or, the miracle of another revenue source. Some animal sanctuary offered to take them in for free, but free doesn't pay the bills. So I took a cool $600 for each. With a little more than a G in my pocket, I could finally afford my nacho stand. Now my guests could suck the delicious nacho cheese off their fingertips while looking at sad space chimps. Oh yeah, the chimps. I accidentally spent their habitat money on a lucrative nacho stand. Luckily, the space government saw that I was in a bit of financial trouble and gave me a handout. The free market working as intended. After finding just the right place for the chimp shelter, I was able to complete the rest of the habitat. It was a little small for the chimp's liking, but so was the tiger's habitat. Fair is fair. What am I supposed to do, just extend their cages? Out of the question. I already spent money on their 2 chimp jungle gyms, and I was already over budget. I did the next sensible thing and placed a gift stand and a prairie dog cafe. I don't remember this vaguely racist Mexican-themed restaurant in the original game that I played growing up, but the smiling prairie dog with a sombrero on top really spoke to my heritage in a way that I've never been able to awaken on my own before. Little did I know that this would be the primary shekel maker of the park. It also turned out that people didn't like the nacho stand as much as I thought they would. So, I fired the employee without notice. Maybe they should have been a little better at their job. With the animal attraction situated, I needed to create some sort of human attraction. I settled on the idea of a children's park right next to the sad, soulful-eyed chimps to juxtapose the guests' own freedom and fun. For added safety, I put sharp, jagged rocks along the unrailed edge to incentivize the children to not fall off the edge while playing. After the park was finished, I noticed that space garbage was starting to pile up around the zoo, so I had to hire a space janitor to help deal with it. And at $300 a month, I didn't have to think twice. The minimum wage in space must be an unlivable amount, which is unfortunate, but I'll be damned if I let the Space Union space unionize my space janitors. After I built my possibly too small exhibit for my definitely too small of horses, I found out that I could name the park. I couldn't think of a better, more appropriate name. If you don't know what this word means, try not to have people you care about around when you look it up, and maybe delete your history after looking it up. It'll be our little secret. After naming the park, I decided to advertise it on public television and local papers to stir up some business. Sure, I had plenty more copper wire to strip from the moon, but that was a finite resource for emergencies. I needed the steady income of patrons who loved seeing sad animals in cages. That's where the real money was. But until that dream became a reality, it was back to stripping copper wire for quick cash. So far, the moral of the story seems to be, if your ailment is poverty, seek out copper wire. It's amazing how art mimics life, or perhaps the other way around. After finishing up another attraction, I noticed that there was a big nothing at the end of this animal safari walkway. I wanted to make something memorable, something that would stick with people and create fond memories for my guests, and something that would make me shekel rich. So I built another prairie dog cafe. It was the go-to destination before, why not now? Prophets said that people liked it, so why should I deprive them of this vaguely racist restaurant chain? The regular animals were attracting guests, but I didn't want to stagnate as a zoo, so I took some notes from another well-known animal franchise with no prior controversies, SeaWorld, and invested in some aquatic animals. While I was building my first aquatic attraction, I noticed the sound of violent vomiting. I noticed only guests coming out of the second Prairie Dog Cafe were vomiting, yet guests were still entering, knowing the risk. I don't know about you, but if I saw more than one person vomiting outside of a restaurant I was about to enter, I would probably reconsider my food choices. Maybe they're just built different. Without any lawsuits pending against me for unsafe food handling, I finished my aquatic exhibit, and started my new sea life adventure. I started with sea turtles to lure guests into a false sense of ease and calmness. But I also wanted to let my guests feel excitement, so I made the main entrance to the aquatic side of my zoo a shark hallway. Fun fact, my first time at SeaWorld I went through a shark hallway, not too dissimilar to the one in this game. I was way too young and very unprepared for the horror that waited inside. For some reason they decided to play a dark, horror-styled soundtrack while I was met with the jaws of sharks 4 times bigger than my 6-year-old self. And to top it off, they had a giant plaster of megalodon jaws at the end of the attraction. I thought they were just regular shark jaws. I didn't go into the water for the rest of the year. With any luck, maybe this shark walkway will cause a similar childhood trauma for someone else. The shark walkway was a hit, but I didn't have a plan ready for after they exited, so the guests decided to go rogue and blaze their own paths to the abandoned parts of the moon base. Fortunately, they did sign a contract and entry that stated that we would not be liable for any space entries that occurred during any self-inflicted space adventure. I realized that I needed a solution quick, so I threw together a swimming attraction and a walkway. Unfortunately, an innocent bystander was caught in the construction. They weren't hurt or killed, but some may say purgatory is a worse fate than death. I suppose they will have some time to think about where they went wrong and contemplate the sins and decisions that wrought their current predicament. Also, I said screw it and made the turtle's enclosure smaller to accommodate my lucrative restaurant, because there's no way I'm moving my moneymaker for some lame endangered species. I also placed some snake pits to help encourage guests to stay on the correct path. But humans tend to find a way to foul things up for themselves. After creating a hammerhead sharks exhibit, I wanted to check in on my guests' happiness and overall liking of the park. I was surprised to find that 9 guests were unhappy with their experience. I used my godlike omnipresence to read their minds, but I couldn't find a reason for them to be unhappy. They just were. I know the feeling. Also, I had a historic first. I had a guest become the first recorded fatality by a hammerhead shark in human history. Though I wasn't given an award for my scientific discovery, I did think it was pretty amazing. After the lawsuit from the family of the deceased, I needed some money, so I made a high-end fancy area so our more affluent guests could have their choice of overpriced food and beverage. I even installed a fancy bathroom that, for some reason, had a large replica of a toilet on top. Now that's class. But it didn't bring the business that I needed, so instead, I immediately fired all the employees and leveled all the upscale establishments and put a Prairie Dog Cafe, because people don't want an $8 ice cream. They want an $11 platter of nachos that will most definitely give them explosive diarrhea. Fun fact, every nacho platter served in my zoo comes with a tube of Preparation H. With another successful restaurant under my belt, I noticed that some parts of the park were falling into disrepair. The trash was overflowing, the tiger's fence was really close to breaking open, yet The one space janitor I hired to take care of the whole park was nowhere to be found. I used the tracking microchip implanted in their head to find them. Turns out they thought it was their duty to walk 20 miles to the forgotten, haunted side of the moon base and fix decaying fences. At first, I was quite angry, but then I realized he was not just a space janitor. He was his own main character in his own doujin. They earned themselves a new title and a newfound respect from me. I could have easily used my god powers to pick them up and make them fix the fence that I needed fixed immediately, but I knew I couldn't interfere with their story and left them to wander back at their own time and pace, because a space janitor is never late, nor are they ever early. They arrive precisely when they need to. While contemplating my own existence, I added a couple of upgrades to the park here and there to get it ready for the main event. I believe my park was ready for the big leagues. It was ready for whale tricks. Unfortunately, I had no idea what I was doing because I didn't read the paper instruction manual that came with my totally physical, not cracked version of the game. Luckily, I was able to find out how the show mechanics worked on some 20-year-old incel forum. When I eventually figured out how to make it work, I found it to be wholly not worth it. I had to make a separate jail, exhibit for the show animals, while I constantly had to monitor them for food and wellness. On top of that, I had to have 2 sets of whales to keep the shows going. The shows didn't even rake in that much cash. I see why SeaWorld doesn't do it anymore. In doing research for this video, I found that they stopped doing Shamu shows because feeling Shamu's pain, I thought about my animals with the smallest exhibit, my purgatory humans. I gave them a more suitable environment that I myself wouldn't have minded living in. Soon after I did this, the UN stopped sending me letters with words like human rights violations and war crimes in them. It was a win for everybody. At this point, I finally felt like my zoo was flourishing. I had a library of varied animals and appropriately sized exhibits. I had my R&D team in full swing researching new animal care items and techniques, but something else yearned in me. Something that I believe is inherent of all humans. A want. No, a need for more. I didn't have to stop and ask if I should. I just did, and brought back the dinosaurs. While building my zoo, I started watching a movie called Jurassic Park, and I was so inspired by the hero entrepreneur protagonist that I had to stop watching it halfway through to put my highly trained R&D team to work, making this miracle of science happen. In no time, we had dinosaurs walking alongside humankind. And of course we had dinosaur rides and merchandise to go along with this great feat of genetic engineering. My zoo was on top of the world. There was no way anything bad could happen. Who could have foreseen this happening? If only there was a sexy shirtless man who could have stopped me and shown me the errors of my ways. It was my own hubris. I don't know how this could have ever happened. I spared no expense. Maybe I should have finished Jurassic Park to see how the hero made his park so safe. Well, with the park in ruins, I decided to send a special forces unit in to help wrangle up the monsters I created, and pull myself up by my millionaire bootstraps and try again. This time, I fully optimized my park for maximum profit. No longer would my guests go 100 feet without a diarrhea-inducing nacho plate, because after every exhibit there would be a Mexican-themed restaurant. No longer would my guests have to defecate in corners of buildings and alleyways, because I would put more than 2 bathrooms for a whole park. And if they really had money burning a hole in their pocket, they could just give it to me with my many conveniently placed gift shops and attractions. Finally, I had the perfect park. And with my new enhanced fence technology and emergency response teams, there's no way these dinosaurs would ever escape again. So I probably should have watched Jurassic World as well. I loved this game as a child, but even to this day it holds up as a competent business sim. It gives you a little serotonin boost when your zoo starts to make enough money, not unlike most idle phone games. The animal care side of things does add a lot to the gameplay. Just figuring out what works for each animal can seem like a bit of a guessing game at times, but if you take the time to read each animal's info card, you don't need to guess. Every animal in the game comes with one of these cards. Not only do they show you what terrain and tree they prefer, but the info card also gives you a short description of the animal's habits and types of environments they would live in naturally. This game won several awards after its release for being a great learning tool for children, and was praised for being one of the better business sims at the time. The game does come with a campaign style mode if free play isn't your thing. The campaign gives you challenges to complete, usually in a certain time frame. Each campaign mission focuses on a different objective, ranging from bringing your zoo to a certain rating, or a certain amount of exhibits, to getting a specific award, and so on. My favorite part of the game is the creative freedom it gives you. You can place exhibits in any shape or form, and you can choose what animals you want to put in there. You can even put different animals in the same exhibit and hope they get along. It's also fun trying to figure out the optimal pathing for guests to view the animals, but also pass by your establishments and let them spend their money. It adds a bit of strategy to the game. If you were to only make animal exhibits and no gift shops or anything like that, you'd be relying on ticket sales alone. But if you overload guests with too many choices in one area, they will only spend their money at one store and skip the rest. And since you have to pay a monthly upkeep cost per building, you might not make a profit off certain establishments. It's kind of like a tower defense game in a way, but instead of the thing you're trying to route attacking you, it gives you money. This game was a bit of a beast to get running on Windows 10, let alone record it. It doesn't play well with dual monitors, OBS, or a resolution better than 800 by 600. But if you really want to play it, you can go through the regular channels to secure your own physical copy. Luckily, I was able to obtain my copy for 2 shekels from my local gypsy who sets up shop behind the Trader Joe's. The copy was definitely cursed for that price, but it was a price I was willing to pay. If you don't have access to a local gypsy vendor, you could try your luck on a certain website that deals with abandonware. Again, you could go to a My Abandonware as another means of obtaining the game. Also, I was able to play the second game for the first time in my life while reviewing the original, and it's pretty good. I never got to play it as a child because I wasn't able to steal it from my school's book fair. The second game went with a 3D look, as was the big thing to do at the time. It has blocky 3D models that didn't age too well, but you do get to walk around your own park in 3D, which is pretty cool. It even has all the same DLC as the first game, and allows you to play a little Call of Duty if your animals go on a rampage. The second game can also be obtained by similar means as the first. Overall, I give Zoo Tycoon and its expansions the number of times I've enjoyed myself at zoos in my life. Over the time I saw a gang of ducks drown another duck for being disabled at the San Diego Wild Animal Park and the Flamingo exhibit when I was 11. 7 out of 10.